It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview two of the business owners of SiblingRivarlyBB podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Yeah, doing great.
Can you talk about how you got started with the podcast?
Well, actually, kind of started out with that. We always talk baseball, and we always have. And one day, Jana saw a thing on Twitter that another baseball podcast was looking for fans of different teams because they were doing their preseason, preview. And so she sent it to me and I sent it to them. It was Too Much Pod Tar podcast. And I said, hey, I'm an Angels fan. They said, okay, well, finally work something out, talk to them, and was on that. And at that point, we started talking, hey, why don't we have a podcast? We could talk Dodgers and Angels and baseball in general. And at that moment, we didn't hesitate. We said, okay, let's do it. And we've been going, 28 weeks now, 29 weeks almost.
Yeah, 29 weeks. Yeah, so we text every day. So I like to look at our podcasts like our text messages back and forth all the time, 24 hours, not quite 24 hours.
Jana, how did y'all come up with the names Sibling Rivalry BB?
So we're siblings. We figured sibling rivalry worked well, but we know that there are other podcasts and several of them that have that same name. And since we're focused on baseball, we thought, well, we'll put Sibling Rivalry Baseball in there. And then that also allowed us to do like SRBB or Sibling Rivalry BB. And also because we both love the Dodgers and the Angels, but we favor one team over another. Obviously, you can see Jeff's Angels hat, my Dodgers flag. So there is a little bit of a rivalry there too when the Angels and Dodgers play.
Jeff, what are some topics that y'all talk about?
Well, it's all baseball all the time. We kind of break it down into what's happening in the world. Like it was kind of hard at the beginning when we started the podcast because we were planning on a full season and we dropped our first podcast on opening day, or what was supposed to be opening day. So we spent a lot of time talking at the beginning about how we're going to handle this. How long will it last? And then as it went, we started coming up with crazy ideas to get a baseball season in, or just, for things. And as the time's gone and once we got a season, we're talking, what happens in the week prior, especially for the Dodgers and Angels. We take a look around the league to see what else is going on, anything big news, some oddities, just to make sure that we have a full picture of what's going on and not just always be completely focused on our two favorite teams, but how the rest of the league affects them.
Jana, what are some of the segments that y'all have?
So we usually have, our first segment usually is something general, baseball related. So for instance, we talked about robo umpires one time. Early on, we talked about, I think our history, because we were just trying to figure out things to talk about. And then of course we have our Dodger segment, our Angel segment, and then we do, as Jeff had mentioned, around the league with the other teams and how that all affects the Dodgers and the Angels.
Jeff, starting off with you, what are some of your favorite memories that you've had while doing the podcast?
I don't know. It's all a blur, really, of everything, because we've been this season has been such a crazy season with all of the, the pandemic and the short schedule. So getting to really dive a little deeper into the sport to find things to talk about has been fun. The playoffs have been fun to talk about. Nothing one particular thing so far stands out that we've talked about. At least I hope I'm not forgetting anything and all that. We've had a lot of fun with it, but of the things that have happened this season, I think that the Angels pretty much owning and sweeping one of the series versus the Houston Asterix, as we call them, versus the Astros. That's probably been a favorite. I'm sure for Jana, it's probably more like Dodgers beating the Angels, but it was.
Yes, they swept them.
Yes, they did.
Jana, what is some of your favorite memories?
I think it's probably early on when we were just trying to figure out how baseball was going to work. We came up with some crazy ideas like Survivor Baseball, the Gong Show. That was kind of a little in reference to the Asterix, but just a Thunderdome, just different things that we came up with. And really just, I think my overall, I say memory, but just ongoing is being able to do a podcast with my brother. Obviously, he's in California, I'm in New Mexico. So getting to spend that time with him out of my day, which is usually crazy, is really cool. So that's what I really like.
Jeff, can you talk about, as she talked about both of y'all in two different states, how does that work for your podcast? Like, do you have to pre-plan time out for like your podcast?
Yeah, we have a pretty good schedule about that. We meet a couple times a week, and as she mentioned earlier, we're constantly texting, and now even more with like show ideas. But we look at every Friday we get together and we do a production meeting, go over what stands out to us about the week. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's harder, but we always do that to kind of give ourselves an idea of where we want to go when we meet. And then normally early on Tuesday mornings, because we drop every Thursday at 1:10, we record the show early in the morning. And if we didn't do it that way, who knows? She's got a busy life. I'm a little easier to get in things because I don't have as many things going on at home. But if we didn't, we'd probably never get it done, or it would be in bits and pieces all over the place. So we definitely have to have a schedule to make it happen.
Yep.
What are some of your future plans for the podcast?
Well, we love to have guests and interviews. One of the guys that we would really love to interview, and we poke fun, but I think we both are fans of his when he pitched for the Dodgers, and that's Josh Fields. So having to be able to interview him, but just having interviewing people on the podcast, and also making, I think, getting a bigger social media presence.
Yeah, I think those things, obviously trying to get some people in. We wanted to take this first season to get a feel for how it was going to be. Was it something that we actually wanted to continue to do? I know that, sometimes you just say, oh yeah, this sounds like fun. And then it becomes a burden versus an actual fun endeavor, which hasn't been the case for us. But yeah, getting folks to come in and or to interview different folks on the podcast. I think too, besides the media presence, that way to put ourselves in a position where we could actually have a better baseball presence, or maybe even get ourselves into a position where we can get credentialed media-wise to go to games, to maybe even interview some players or some staff on site once we can all go back. So yeah, it's just, I think it's just to continue to grow it and just make it better. And I think that even if we can't do those things, we'll still continue to do it because we just love talking the game.
What advice would y'all give somebody that's looking to start off a sports podcast?
I would say if they're looking to do a sports podcast or just podcast in general, is just to do it. A lot of times you think, oh, yeah, I think I could do this. It's really not as difficult as it may sound, but you do have to put work into it. But I think the other thing is being consistent. You have to be consistent in your episodes, be consistent in your meetings, and to make sure that you have a good product.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. I see times postings, in different groups. Since we've gotten into this, we're in different Facebook groups or on Twitter, and you see these people will say, "Oh, I don't think I have the right equipment to do this," or "I'm so nervous about doing this," or "I hate the sound of my voice," or whatever, all the different excuses. You probably, have heard those too. It's just a matter of saying, "I'm going to do it," and doing it. It's the Nike thing. Just do it. And don't worry, I have this headset that I use. This is what I use to record with, and I got it in an old job, and it works perfectly fine. Eventually, I'll probably have to get something different, but don't worry about those little things. Stop letting the pebbles trip you up. There's no big boulders or anything. If you're passionate about what you're going to talk about, just give yourself a structure. Set some time aside, like you asked us earlier. Say from this time to this time I'm going to record, and then put it out. If you there's a lot of resources out there. You can always ask a lot of questions, but I've never seen anybody be non-supportive about doing it. But you just have to do it. You can't talk yourself out of it, and that's too easy to do. That's what we did. We just flat out said, boom, we're going to do it. We're going to do it on this day. Here's what we're going to do. And at the beginning, it's always exciting, and it can be a grind sometimes, depending on what you're doing, especially if you're not sure what you're going to talk about. And we had a lot of weeks like that where we're like, what are we going to talk about? There's nothing going on. So we had to really dig in and find things. And usually right before you come up with and once you start talking about it, more things come up. So,
and especially do something that you love. Talk about something that you love. We love baseball. We'll tell you it's in our DNA. So talking about baseball is not hard. So do something that you want to talk about, something that's fun for you.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find your podcast at on social media along with podcast platforms?
So social media wise, we're on Twitter, and it's at SiblingRivalryBB without the A on Twitter. On Instagram, we're at SiblingRivalryBB, and you can find us at SiblingRivalBB on Facebook.
On Facebook.
Well. And then our website is SiblingRivalryBB.com, and you can get into our podcast there. And we're also on all of the main platforms, Apple, Amazon. We're on Amazon now. We do a YouTube that is just the audio. There's not really any video, but that's more for the closed captioning part of it. But yeah, you find us anywhere: Google, Podchaser, Pocket Cast.
Thank you again for your interview, and best of luck with your podcast, Sports Rivalry. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, y'all, for your interview, and best of luck with Sports Business Rivalry.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.